Moving on to the University of California, page 11, issue 8.
Yes, this is a trailer bill that was proposed in our May revision to slightly modify a policy that was implemented in the 2012 budget to move the capital outlay program into the UC's main support budget item. This language just increases the flexibility in how the UC will be able to finance its infrastructure using those support appropriations, and then also makes a technical change to a UC Merced classroom and academic office building project that was authorized in 2012 to allow those monies to be expended as planned.
Thank you. Elio?
So there's one trailer bill here, but two proposals, as you heard. There's no connection between the two proposals. And in fact, your agenda only addresses one part of the trailer bill. It addresses the second part that Ms. Bosler spoke to, which is reappropriating some savings from the preliminary plans and design phase of the Merced building to be used for construction. It would reappropriate $1.4 million. We have no concerns with that aspect of the trailer bill. The other part of the trailer bill, however, as you heard, increases the flexibility that the state gave to the university 2 years ago in the 2013-14 budget. The state at that time amended state law to allow UC to use its state funding to repay bonds that UC issues. The trailer bill would increase the flexibility in terms of the types of financing mechanisms UC could use. So the trailer bill includes what's called an availability payment. These are typically used for public-private partnerships. And what UC indicates it intends to do is to develop the Merced campus, it wants to enter into a public-private partnership that would have the private partner would construct, build, design, and maintain the facility for several decades. This proposal was just put forward to you last week. We think it's a significant policy change. We haven't had, there might be merit to the proposal. We haven't had quite enough time to fully evaluate the potential risks associated with the proposal. For instance, what would happen if a private entity did not perform up to standards or if the private entity went bankrupt. So we would recommend that you not approve the proposal at this time.
Thank you. So, colleagues, the Budget Subcommittee 2 took action on just the portion of the plan relating to the project savings. That was what the subcommittee approved. That's what's before us, suggested today. I'll call on Senator Block in just a moment. The concern that the LAO just expressed is not a part of what the subcommittee took action on. Senator Block?
The subcommittee action didn't have opposition and was the consensus of the group. So we're asking for approval of the action.
Of just the portion of the plan relating Correct. To the project savings. So that's the motion before us. No public comment, no further comments. Call the roll, please.
Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen?
No.
Nielsen, no. Allen?
Aye.
Allen, aye. Anderson? Anderson, no. Bell? Bell, aye. Block?
Aye.
Block, aye. Hancock? Aye. Hancock, aye. Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell, aye. Monning? Aye. Monning, aye. Morlock? Morlock, aye. Wynn? Aye. Wynn, aye. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Pavley? Aye. Pavley, aye. Roth?
Aye.
Roth, aye. Stone? Stone, no. Woke? Aye. Woke, aye. That's 13 aye, 3 no.
13-3, the motion passes. So that completes our work on education. We're going to move on to resources, environmental protection, energy and transportation. Page 12, item 9 is in CTC.
Yes, the first item is the road usage charge pilot that the state is currently implementing. The governor's budget proposed $9.6 million from the state highway account to implement the bill that was signed last year, SB 1077. The governor's May revision actually requests a multi-year expenditure plan for the road usage charge and increases the funding by $1.3 million. And this is really to accelerate the pilot pilot project a year earlier by June 2017. We hope that the final outcomes of the study would be available by that time. Just a little bit about transportation funding in general. As you may have read in the May revision, the administration continues to convene work groups with the various transportation stakeholders to explore ways to do new pay-as-you-go funding alternatives for the state's core transportation backbone, that state's highways, and also local roads and highways as well. And also, this work group is looking at funding alternatives, but also prioritizing those transportation investments on what the largest needs are that are out there. We will continue to work with the legislature. We have observed that there are some proposals out in the legislature now, and we hope to continue to work with the legislature to develop a funding package by the end of the year.
Thank you, Ms. Bosler. LAO.
James Hacker, LAO. The administration's proposal raised a number of concerns for our office, specific to the January proposal. We found that the budget request made a number of assumptions about, or likely made a number of assumptions about the size and scope of the pilot, which seems to preempt the process laid out in SB 1077. Additionally, we noted that the administration didn't provide a detailed expenditure plan for how they would put those funds to use. With regards to the May proposal, the additional $1.3 million to accelerate the pilot by a year, we would note that accelerating the pilot could potentially limit its ability or limit its success in its ability to inform future policy decisions by limiting the amount of time available to test certain key features of the pilot. Additionally, we would note that the funding is likely premature, as the administration has noted that the funding will not be needed until 2016-17. Due to these concerns, we have three major proposals or recommendations. First, we would recommend rejecting the May revision, the 1.3 in additional funding. Second, we would recommend requiring the administration to answer a number of key questions before approving the remaining funding, specifically providing details on how they plan to spend the funds and justifying the assumptions made in the budget request. And lastly, we would recommend adopting supplemental reporting language requiring the administration to report on the pilot design and implementation plan no less than 60 days before implementing it, in order to ensure that the final pilot design is in line with the legislature's intention and expectations.
Thank you, Mr. Hagler. Ms. Bosler, would you like to respond?
J.C. Thompson, Department of Finance. This is a response to SB 1077, which required a technical advisory committee, which was formed by the Transportation Commission in consultation with the Secretary for Transportation. And this technical advisory committee has already begun meeting, has held a number of meetings, and is going to be making recommendations to the Secretary. And the legislation was actually fairly prescriptive about the different elements that need to be addressed by the pilot. There's privacy issues, technology issues, a myriad of issues that are going to be looked at through this pilot project. And so as the Technical Advisory Committee makes recommendations to Caltrans and to the Transportation Agency, the funds that are provided by this program will allow the department to be flexible and responsive to the Technical Advisory Committee, and will enable them to enter into contracts with vendors on an as-needed basis in order to enable the pilot to move forward in the most expeditious manner possible. And that is why we set forth a multi-year expenditure plan for this project. And additionally, that's why in the May revision we're proposing additional funding related to the acceleration. We respectfully disagree with the analyst's office that accelerating the pilot program will result in a dilution of the study results. We believe that, in fact, accelerating the program will provide us with more time to review the results from the pilot project. And as you know, the state of transportation funding is dire, and the state is in need of additional transportation funds in the very immediate future. And the sooner we can get the results from the study, the sooner the administration and the legislature can work to move forward toward a long-term solution.
So just to clarify, the differences of opinion on some of the finer points between you and the LAO, we're statutorily required to implement this pilot project.
That's correct.
Okay. And the funds will come from the state highway account. Tell us a little bit about its health and well-being and where the money comes from into that account.
So the funds that go into the state highway account come from excise taxes, And those funds are available for transportation purposes, and there are already funds set aside for this purpose.
And the fund balance is in the neighborhood of?
I would have to check on the fund balance for you, on the precise fund balance, but it's certainly sufficient for this purpose.
All right, if you could.
Sure,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Senator Wolk, you heard this in your committee.
We did not spend a great deal of time on this, which is why it's held open and brought here. I would recommend that we move forward with this. This was a proposal that came through the legislature, was supported by the legislature, and within the context of the necessity to figure out a sound financial basis of transportation monies going forward, it's really important that we have this information about the road usage charge. It's important to understand that that's a pilot program. When and if that's completed, which should be done as quickly as possible, a road charge couldn't be implemented in California without further legislative authorization. But we really do need to move this issue forward in conjunction with the overall planning for more transportation funding. So I would be willing to move the motion. I think that the LAO made a couple good suggestions, which I would imagine our committee would have gone along with, which is there needs to be further detail. There's nothing wrong with that. And the supplemental reporting language, we need reporting in a consistent fashion, according to the LAO suggestion. That's all very good.
Okay. Senator Bell.
Well, I have to see the Senate's appointment to that committee.
Oh, there you go.
So I'd be happy to arrange to have the report. There's one senator and one assembly members on the committee, so we have that, and I think we can put it on the agenda of our policy committee and send a copy to work also with the budget committee and make reports. It's a very complicated issue. I mean, it's going to be very difficult from a fiscal but also a technical standpoint to change and transition from the gasoline tax as a major source to some other basis for financing our roads in California. It's going to be very difficult, and it has to be well thought out or we'll be in real trouble, as you can imagine.
Thank you, Senator Bell. And again, Senator Wolk, with your obvious and rightful concern for reporting, the very fact of the Technical Advisory Committee on which Senator Bell sits is to make sure that the intent of the legislation that we passed and which requires the fact of this pilot program will be according to the statute, and Senator Bell is a part of our eyes and ears there. So we have Senator Morlock, Senator Stone, and then Senator Nielsen.
Mr. Chair, we have two neighboring states, Oregon and Washington, that are already doing studies. So I would ask Senator Bell, are we being redundant or are we not relying on their research?
We are relying on their research. There's numerous research. There's New Zealand, there's Oregon, there's Washington. Those studies are underway, so we are relying on that, yes.
But we're going to go ahead and do our own study as well?
Well, yeah, because we have 34 million cars in California, so we're quite a bit a different scale, and that's going to be the major issue is, although those projects are pilots for certain small populations in Oregon and Washington, what we're talking about is transitioning the whole way we finance road maintenance and construction to a new model, which will take much more extensive, more detailed, more ongoing kind of approaches. And that's the issue. It's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. This is going to be perhaps we can pull together a presentation to go over this in great detail if you'd like. It sounds like we should do this. So I'd be happy to arrange that.
I just see that the study being done in our neighboring states, they're already providing an option that you could do. So I sit here and say, why reinvent the wheel? Because I've driven this country and, it's kind of the same depending, every state's got the same. You got urban centers and you got rural areas. So I just wonder if there's a savings opportunity, Mr. Chair, and that's.
Yeah, we are working and looking at them. All these different states have different ways they finance their transportation infrastructure. Everybody's got a different methodology or different tax system. So that's so this is not just about the technical aspects of how you analyze the different models of financing transportation. It's, you got different, you might have one way of financing it, you might have multiple ways of financing. It can get real complicated, in other words. So that's the issue. Okay.
Senator Morlock, all good questions and good responses from Senator Bell. And just to remind us all that, as Ms. Thompson reminded us, we're statutorily required to proceed with this. We've already voted on that.
We can undo it with another bill, right?
We certainly could.
Yeah.
We certainly could. Senator Stone and then Senator Nielsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't here when SB 1077 was passed, but I want to at least share my concerns on behalf of the constituents of Riverside County. As you know, Riverside County is a pretty large place. So is San Bernardino County. And if you're going to start putting a fee for vehicle miles traveled, you're really going to be helping or hurting the working poor and the middle class in our counties. You have, you know, San Francisco, housing's very expensive. You're pretty condensed. Riverside County is spread out. Roughly 50% of the people that live in southwest Riverside County commute out of our county to find work. And so I think that this is going to potentially burden hardworking Californians that already have said, you know, we paid our taxes at the pump, and you've encouraged us through incentives to buy energy-efficient cars and electric cars, and now you want to tax us again. Those are the arguments I'm hearing in my county. And here we heard strong support for Prop 98, robust discussion about listening to the voters and funding early education, which was debated, litigated. And then we had the citizens of this state that passed Prop 42 that said we want our taxes paid at the pump to be used for roads, streets, and bridges. And then a legislature prior to last year, during an economic crisis, chose to call that tax a fee, and we no longer use those funds that our citizens have always thought was to be used and actually demanded us to use for maintenance of roads, which we don't do. So I'm also concerned about the privacy issues. I'm sure that the study will address those issues. But again, you know, are we going to listen to the voters on issues that are convenient for us to listen to, or are we going to listen to all the issues that the constituents of this state want us to listen to? The governor in his State of the State address said, we have $60 billion of infrastructure that we need to fix. He didn't identify a funding source, but that didn't even take into account the local streets and roads, which statewide are $80 billion. So we have $140 billion in need. We have revenue sources, weight fees paid by trucks, Prop 42 funds that we choose not to use to repair our roads and streets and bridges, and yet we want to go to our citizens and ask them to pay yet more money for fuel efficiency vehicles and electric vehicles that we've incentivized them to give. So I feel very conflicted by the messaging that we're sending to our constituents. It's like, when is enough enough? When are we going to tighten up and use the revenues that our citizens want to see used for roads and not pull the wool over their eyes and change the game when it's convenient for this legislature to do so? So for those reasons, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote no on this.
Thank you, Senator Stone. I just want to clarify, for all the very important reasons you've just expressed, Senator DeSaulnier did not put before the legislature a piece that would shift us from our current way of taxing fuel to vehicle miles traveled. Instead, he said, we need more information. We need to look into all the different questions you've just asked, and they are all rightful questions, and that's the purpose of the program before us. So you're jumping ahead just a little bit. We're not suggesting we do any of the things that you're doing, are fearful of, we want to first study it further, and that's what's before us.
Thank you. That's what I'm hearing in my district's, Senator level.
Right.
That
And I have
the
many of the
citizens
same
are
concerns
angry,
you do.
concerned.
Many of the same concerns you do. I'm quite ambivalent, but we're going to look at it more once we have the information from the study. So before we get to Senator Bell's response, we have Senator Nielsen, then Senator Pavley, and then Senator Bell does want to respond to some of the things that you've just said. So Senator Nielsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and notwithstanding the passing of the statute and your very apt depiction of the statute, I simply have a very fundamental concern with this particular idea of transportation funding, and I cannot bring myself to sanction it by even voting on this.
Very good.
It's simple.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Senator Pavley, then Senator Bell.
I'll just briefly say I'm supporting this because it is put in statute for a pilot program. I won't be here, however, when this is done. I hope some of those questions have been asked are part of the study, just not how much revenue you can get off of switching to this to put in deferred maintenance. I am supportive of programs like Senator Bell's for coming up with revenue for deferred maintenance. I know we need this. On a philosophical level, I don't like this one. Sometimes people don't have a choice that they can live where they work. Let's take San Francisco. The jobs are there, but who can afford to live there? You can't even get a one-bedroom anything for less than $1 million. So are only people that have to drive to work picking up more than their fair share of the road requirements? And this also puts a disincentive if you're just taxed on how many miles you drive. It puts a disincentive of people purchasing a fuel-efficient vehicle, which they do to minimize their exposure at the gas station. So this is sort of a narrow look at how you can make more money for deferred maintenance without considering broader social costs.
Right. Again, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, because that's not, but your point's well taken, that it could send a confusing market signal.
It does, and it says authorized by the legislature. I assume that means through legislation?
Yeah.
Yes. Senator Bell.
Just
Senator Roth.
a couple things, so we don't make presumptions about what we're doing, okay? First of all, there is no assumption in this committee's work that any particular type of revenue source will be adopted. That is not true. There is no assumption. They are going to study varying options, and to say otherwise is not correct, okay? To say otherwise is not correct. They will look at all the different options, including just leaving it like it is and maybe adjusting various fees that we currently have. That will be one option. There's also a look at technology. What is technologically feasible? Then they're specifically, Senator Stone, going to look specifically very carefully about any proposals that have an issue of on the privacy issue. They actually have appointments to the committee and people that are privacy experts sitting on the committee from a technical standpoint. And these people are sitting as members of the committee and participate. And then the last thing I want to say is there's going to be a robust public outreach in terms of talking to, getting academics, other kinds of ideas, what other states are doing beyond the Washington, Oregon, to determine what other ideas are out there, what new ideas that we don't even know about today are. So it will be a robust exercise. We spend a lot of money on transportation right now. These kinds of exercises are not idle acts. They're very important that we spend money looking to the future on how we're going to finance our infrastructure. And there's also no presumption that taxes will go up. There's no presumption that taxes will go up with this. That's not part of the decision that the committee will make. It'll be a decision that is vested in us, the legislature, obviously, and the voters, of course. So I just want to make those points, and I want to make people understand that this was passed last year in a bipartisan fashion. We had a bipartisan legislation passed and adopted this, and we will proceed. The one thing I want to point out is the governor's trying to get us to increase the timeline so we complete the project earlier, and that's what we will do.
Important information for us. Thank you, Senator Bell. Senator Roth.
You know, I too represent Riverside County and at least portions of it, and it's a very challenged area, like many in Southern California, where frankly there's a geographic separation of affordable housing from jobs, and many people, many of them of fairly low income, drive substantial distances to try to make a living and support their families. So while I will be supporting this proposition, it is far from certain in my mind whether vehicle miles traveled is the appropriate way to deal with the transportation crisis that we have in the state. But I am not unmindful of the fact that whether it's $59 to $60 billion in the relatively short run or $360 to $500 billion in the out years, we have a substantial maintenance backlog and need for new infrastructure improvements. And it's also pretty clear to me that whether the weight fees are redirected or not, even if redirected, the weight fees are not nearly sufficient to deal with this situation. I recognize that several of my colleagues weren't here when we debated this last year, but it was pretty clear during the debate, both in the committee and on the floor, that California had to do something, and we had to start studying the issue more than just the normal studies that we do around here, but a very deliberate study with a view to coming up with a solution to this very real problem. So whether it's vehicle miles traveled, whether it's redirecting weight fees, whether it's other taxes and fees or some other solution or some combination of all of those, plus something else we probably haven't even thought of, I think this study is a very important this pilot program is a very important first step, and we'll see where it all comes out, but we do need to fix, repair, and improve our roads. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Roth. I think after hearing all these comments, we should study this issue. Senator Wolk.
What a good idea. I'll move that we approve this item as budgeted for the pilot.
We have a motion. Call the roll. Oh, we have public comment. No? Bless your hearts. Call the roll, please.
Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen? No. No. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Anderson? Bell? Aye. Bell, aye. Block? Hancock? Hancock, aye. Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell, aye. Monning? Aye. Monning, aye. Morlock? Morlock, no. Wynn? Wynn, no. Pan? Pan, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Roth? Roth, aye. Stone? Stone, no. Wolk?
Aye.
Wolk, aye. That's 10 aye, 4 no.
Measure passes 10 to 4. And colleagues, without objection, I'm going to ask our allowance of reopening the roll on issue 8, which was the capital outlay trailer bill for UC. Senator Nielsen would like to change a vote.
Yes, no to aye.
From no to aye. So
Anderson, no to aye.
We're on issue 8, page 11.
Okay.
So without objection, we will have some vote changes. Nielsen, no to aye. Anderson, no to aye. And Stone, no to aye.
Stone, no to aye. Okay.
So I think we are then 16-0.
Yes.
All right. Without objection, we are 16-0 on issue 8. All right. Moving on.